Hello and welcome to Beyond Category. I'm Eric Felten. Terence Blanchard is one of the most accomplished musicians of our time. Not only is he a fantastic trumpet player, he's scored the music for some 50 movies, written for Broadway, and most recently composed an opera. He's going to be at Blues Alley with his quintet this evening, but we get to check him out right now. Terence Blanchard,
Hey, man.
that was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
How do you do it? You know, you maintain the highest level of performing as a jazz musician. You're composing for movies. You're writing for Broadway. Mm-hmm. You just had the first performance of a new opera that you composed. You know, one of my heroes, the trombone player J.J. Johnson, when he went off to L.A., one of the jazz musicians who wrote in Hollywood for TV and movies, he really stopped playing for a long time. Yeah. But how do you manage to keep it all going?
It's really a matter of managing your time. You know, one of the things that I had to learn was I used to get up and only operate through inspiration at a certain moment in time. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to sit down and say to yourself, okay, I know I have this and this and this to do. Let me compartmentalize my time, make sure I do a good chunk of this, a good chunk of that, a good chunk of this. Now, inspiration will happen throughout the day, but when that happens, you always have to adjust and readjust your time for the next day. So it's just a matter of staying on point.
There's so much emotion in your playing and the music you do, and I wonder if that comes from the work you've done in movies where you have to always be thinking about what's the emotional effect on the audience that the director is trying to achieve, and how do you enhance that? And you know, has that affected your jazz playing and how you think about your interaction with an audience?
Well, the film world has definitely had an effect on my performing as a jazz musician, but that has more to do with the aspect of storytelling, you know, of having an arc throughout the show and not just have a collection of tunes that we perform. The emotion, I think, really comes from my upbringing playing in the church when I was a kid, you know, being around all of those choirs. My father sang opera and sang in a church choir. My mom went to another church. She went to a Baptist church, and I heard all of that music growing up. So I think that has a lot to do with the emotional component of what I do.
That's a context where the music has a purpose.
Definitely. Not only has a purpose, but also has a healing purpose to it, I guess, because a lot of people will find a redemption, you know, in that music. And I saw that a lot growing up. But the film world has really helped me to understand that, you know, when you sit down for a show, there should be a story, and a definite beginning, middle, and end, you know, and that's what we try to do when we're performing.
And part of telling that story is using melody. I was talking to a great young musician, Tim Green, alto sax player, and he was one of your students. Yes. And one of the things he told me was one of the most important things he learned from you was about the importance of melody. A lot of jazz musicians these days think of the melody as the thing you get away, you know, get over with quickly so you can start improvising. How important is melody in this music?
Well, it's extremely important. I always use a technique of, it's called If I Could Tell You I Would. It's something that Roger Dickinson, who was my composition teacher, taught me as a kid. And really what it is, it's a very simplified manner of dealing with very complex notions of composition. But we also deal with it in improvisation. The best thing I could tell you is, just quickly, is that it's a direct takeoff from di-di-di-da, di-di-di-da, right?
Right.
Those four notes taken and blown up into an entire concerto is the concept that I try to teach these young musicians in terms about improvisation. So that goes back to taking the melody and learning how to develop the melody and not straying from it.
What are you going to play for us next?
The next thing I'm going to play for you is another tune of mine entitled The Hallucination. I got the title actually from my daughter, my 14-year-old daughter. She heard the tune and that's what she came up with. But we've been having a lot of fun playing it.
Terence Blanchard. Terence Blanchard, Hallucination. That's a great tune, and I love the effects on the horn.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing there? How did you make that
Well,
happen?
I mean, on that particular tune, I'm just using a delay, you know. But on other tunes, like on Magnetic, I use an actual octave or below the trumpet. Just, you know, I'm always trying to, and that's another thing that comes from the film world, trying to find other colors and textures just to help you tell the story more effectively.
Now, Terence, you live in New Orleans, grew up in New Orleans.
Yes, sir.
What from New Orleans can you find in the music that you make these days?
The thing that comes from my experience of being in New Orleans is that joy, that exuberance, you know, the joy of life and the joy of playing. One of the things I've always loved about my city is that we've had a lot of great musicians who've never become big stars, but they were great musicians and they loved what they did, and they did it just for the pure joy of playing, and that's the thing you would always hear. I mean, from Louis Armstrong on.
Though you still come home to New Orleans, you're traveling the world all the time. You're out in L.A. working on movies and playing everywhere. What gets into your playing from travel? What are you able to glean?
Exhaustion.
Well, you have to make a tune and call it exhaustion.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the thing that's great about touring is that you get a chance to experience other cultures. You know, I remember being in South America and hearing this music called Saya and being heavily affected by that. Going to Turkey, hearing Turkish music. You know, going in Africa, man. You know, and hearing African music. So I'm always learning things from other cultures, and the thing that's always amazing to me is the unifying notion of the healing, redemptive nature of music. And the power of it, you know, how people are always seeking it out to help them deal with something. And it speaks to something Art Blakey also used to tell us, is that music washes away the dust of everyday life. He used to tell us that every day. And it's one thing that I see confirmation of every time I travel.
You talk about Art Blakey, who you played with as a young man, and by all accounts, one of the greatest band leaders of all time, for that very kind of reason,
Yes.
this notion that he was teaching his young players not only, you know, musical details, but also what music meant, what music was about in the big scheme of life, if you will.
Of course. I mean, you know, one of the things he taught me when I first joined the band, he said, listen, he said, you're here to learn how to become a band leader. You know, he said, that's the goal here. We need band leaders. The other thing he used to tell us that I live my life by is that he said, when it comes to your audience, never play above your audience, never play beneath your audience. Just play straight to them. And that means just to be honest and be who you are.
Well, I can't hear so much great music from you guys without wanting to get in on the act myself and enjoy and play with you. What could we play together?
Cherokee and Beat? No.
Really fast. Really fast.
Why don't we do Autumn Leaves, man? That should be cool.
Oh, it's a great tune. Well, let's get the guys back up and we'll do it.
Okay.
Terence Blanchard. Wow, that was some scary good fun playing with a band as great as that. That was Bryce Winston on the saxophone, Fabian Almazan on the piano, Joshua Crumbly on the bass, Kendrick Scott on the drums, and of course on the trumpet, the spectacular Mr. Terence Blanchard. I'd like to thank Blues Alley Jazz Supper Club here in Washington, D.C. for hosting us, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. I'm Eric Felten, and I hope you'll join me again soon for more good music on Beyond Category.